My husband forgot to end our call. What I overheard left me numb. My name is Claire, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person to share my private life online. But after what happened in Portland, Oregon, I realized my story isn't just mine. It's a warning. Before I start, I just want to say if you enjoy true, real-life stories like this, please subscribe. It really motivates me to keep sharing and reminds me that I'm not alone in my experiences. Just a few months ago, the person I trusted most, my husband of 8 years, betrayed me in a way that made me question every moment of our life together. And the worst part, it wasn't just private heartbreak. It was public, because what I overheard wasn't meant for me, and yet it changed everything. It's one thing to suspect, to wonder in the corners of your mind if someone you love could be hiding something. It's another thing entirely to hear it laid bare, unfiltered, raw, when they believe you're not listening. And that's exactly what happened when my husband forgot to end a call with me. That mistake cracked my world wide open, and the echoes of that moment still rattle inside my chest. When I look back at my marriage, it's strange to reconcile. The man I thought I knew with the one I discovered, Mark, and I met in college. He was charismatic, the type of guy who lit up a room with his easy confidence and quick wit. I was quieter, more reserved, the kind of girl who preferred books over parties. He noticed me one day in the library, teased me about always hiding behind a stack of novels, and from there we slowly built something. Our relationship wasn't explosive or dramatic. It felt steady, safe, the kind of love that promised security. We studied together, laughed over cheap pizza, and dreamed about the future. After graduation, he proposed in the most classic way, down on one knee at sunset. It wasn't grand, but it was heartfelt, and I said yes without hesitation. 8 years of marriage later, I believed we had built a life together that was both ordinary and extraordinary in its own way. We had our routines, our shared dreams, and although not every day was perfect, I truly thought we were in it for the long haul. That's why what happened gutted me so deeply. It wasn't just betrayal, it was the shattering of the story I had been telling myself all along. Before the betrayal, life felt simple and whole. We lived in a small house with a garden that I adored, where I'd spend hours planting flowers, while Mark mowed the lawn. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. I worked as a teacher, pouring my heart into my students, while Mark had a stable job in finance. Our evenings were quiet dinner together, sometimes a movie, sometimes just reading side by side. Weekends were for grocery runs, coffee dates, or visiting friends. To outsiders, we looked like the picture of normalcy. I felt proud of the life we had built, even if it wasn't glamorous. We talked about having children, though we hadn't made that leap yet. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have a partner who understood me, who supported me, who felt like my safe place in a chaotic world. I leaned on him in moments of exhaustion from work, and he leaned on me when deadlines weighed him down. Trust wasn't something I questioned, it was the foundation of everything we shared. That's why the call felt like a cruel twist of fate. I had been lulled into believing our world was unshakable, when in reality, cracks had been forming, where I couldn't see them. The first signs of trouble were subtle, almost easy to dismiss. Mark started working late more often, claiming that his office was in the middle of a demanding project. At first, I didn't question it. I wanted to be supportive, the kind of wife who didn't nag or doubt. But gradually, things shifted. He became more protective of his phone, keeping it face down on the table or taking it with him even to the bathroom. Conversations that used to flow easily between us began to feel stilted. He was distracted, his eyes drifting during dinner, his laugh a little too forced when I told a joke. When I'd ask if everything was okay, he'd brush me off with a smile, telling me I worried too much. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it, that I was just insecure or tired. After all, every couple goes through phases, right? But late at night, lying awake while he snored beside me, I felt a knot tightening in my chest. Something was off, I just didn't have proof. And then came the day that proof landed in my lap, not because I went searching for it, but because of One careless mistake on his part. It was a Thursday afternoon when it happened. I was at home grading papers, my phone propped up on the desk, when Mark called me during his lunch break. It was a casual call, the kind we often shared in the middle of busy days. We talked about what I wanted for dinner, laughed about a silly video I had seen, and then, after a few minutes, he said he had to go. I heard the usual rustle, the click of what I thought was him ending the call, but then silence. Not the kind that means the line is dead, but the faint background noise of an open line. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe he had just forgotten to hang up properly. I was about to press the red button myself when I heard a woman's voice. She was laughing softly, intimately. And then Mark's voice followed, lower, warmer than the tone he used with me. "She has no idea," he said, almost amused. "Sometimes I wonder how she's so clueless." My blood turned to ice. I froze, my hand hovering over the phone, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear. The woman giggled again, asking him if he felt guilty. His response still echoes in my ears. "Not really. Being with you feels real. She's just comfortable, predictable. This is what I want." In that moment, the world tilted. My husband, the man I had built my life around, was calling me predictable while confessing his love for someone else, all because he forgot to hit and call. I sat there numb, my body shaking as the reality of his words crushed the life I thought I knew. The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever lived through. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the way it all unfolded, the humiliation woven into every word I had overheard. I couldn't unhear the laughter of that woman in the background or unfeel the sting of Mark describing me as predictable. And as if the private wound wasn't enough, the humiliation soon became public. Friends began noticing Mark's behavior too. He wasn't as discreet as he thought he was. At a friend's birthday dinner, I caught them exchanging glances across the table. Mark and her, the woman from the call. The way she leaned in, whispering something that made him smirk, was so obvious it made my stomach churn. One of her friends shot me a sympathetic look, as if they knew but didn't have the courage to say it aloud. I felt stripped bare, a wife sitting there like a fool while whispers buzzed around me. Every chuckle from her lips felt like a dagger. Every shift in Mark's expression a reminder that I was no longer his chosen partner. It was public humiliation disguised as normal interaction, but I knew the truth and it burned. I sat there with a smile plastered on my face, pretending not to notice, while inside I was collapsing.
Emotionally, I unraveled. The fallout wasn't just anger, it was grief. Grief for the marriage I thought I had, grief for the man I believed he was, grief for the version of myself who felt safe and cherished. Nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed beside him, listening to the sound of his breathing, wondering if he was dreaming about her while I silently cried into my pillow. My appetite vanished. Meals tasted like ash in my mouth. At school, my students asked if I was okay because I looked tired, and I forced myself to smile and tell them I was fine. But I wasn't fine. I was shattered. Every little thing reminded me of what I had overheard. The tone of his laugh, the way he lingered over texts, the sudden business trips that left me alone in the house. My self-worth plummeted. Was I really that boring, that forgettable, that easy to discard? I had built my identity around being his partner, and suddenly that identity was in ruins. I started questioning not just him, but myself, my looks, my intelligence, even my worth as a woman. The emotional fallout was a storm I couldn't escape, but deep inside, a flicker of anger was beginning to grow. That anger soon transformed into resolve. I knew I couldn't confront him blindly. I needed a plan, something that would not only expose the truth, but also reclaim the power he had stolen from me. I began documenting everything. I kept the call recording, replaying it not to torture myself, but to remember what he had said in his own words. I started noticing patterns in his behavior, late nights, sudden changes in schedule, secretive texts, and I quietly logged them. I confided in a close friend, someone I trusted completely, and she became my anchor, reminding me that I wasn't crazy, that I didn't deserve this. Piece by piece, I constructed a plan. It wasn't enough for me to leave quietly. I wanted the truth laid bare in front of everyone who had been blind to it, including him. I wanted him to feel the weight of the humiliation he had so carelessly dumped on me. Revenge wasn't about cruelty, it was about balance, about making sure I walked away with dignity intact and his lies exposed. The opportunity came faster than I expected. His company was hosting a formal dinner, spouses invited, a night meant for networking and celebration. Mark insisted I attend, putting on the facade of a devoted husband. I agreed, playing my part perfectly, smiling as if nothing was wrong. But inside, I was ready. I dressed carefully that night, choosing a gown that made me feel powerful, strong, untouchable. I carried my phone in my clutch, the recording cued and ready. At the dinner, Mark worked the room with his usual charm, and she was there too, dressed to impress, her eyes flicking toward him every chance she got. People laughed, glasses clinked, speeches were made, and then it was Mark's turn to speak. He stood at the podium, thanking his colleagues, singing praises about loyalty and dedication, and as the room applauded, I felt a surge of bitter irony. When he returned to our table, I rose, smiling sweetly. "If I may," I said, my voice steady. The room turned to me, expecting a dutiful wife's words of support. Instead, I pressed play. His voice filled the room, clear and undeniable. "She has no idea. Sometimes I wonder how she's so clueless. Being with you feels real. She's just comfortable, predictable." Gasps rippled across the room, followed by a stunned silence that seemed to stretch forever. My hands didn't shake, my voice didn't falter. I let every word play, every betrayal spill into the open. And when it ended, I looked at him, his face pale, his jaw tight, and I simply said, "Now you all know the man behind the mask." The silence broke into whispers, eyes darting between us. My revenge wasn't loud or violent, but it was devastating. It was the truth, unveiled in the one place he least expected it. When the recording ended, the room held its breath. Mark's face was a mask of horror, eyes wide, lips parted, his confident persona crumbling in an instant. He tried to speak, stammering something about being taken out of context, but no one was buying it. The woman beside him, the one I had heard on the call, froze too. She shrank into her chair, her smugness dissolving under the weight of 100 stares. She didn't dare defend him. She knew the truth as much as I did. What stunned me most wasn't their silence, but the reaction of the people around us. Colleagues who once admired him now whispered, eyebrows raised in judgment. His boss looked furious, like he'd just realized his golden employee was nothing more than a fraud. Friends at our table avoided his gaze, unable to mask their disappointment. Mark reached for my arm, hissing my name as if he could still control me, but I pulled back sharply. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, not of me, but of losing everything he had built his reputation on. His carefully constructed image had shattered, and there was no fixing it. In the days that followed, the aftermath unfolded like a storm. Mark moved out of our home, leaving behind a silence that felt heavy yet liberating. Word spread quickly, his colleagues distanced themselves, his reputation tarnished beyond repair. The woman I had exposed him with? She disappeared from his side, unwilling to shoulder the public disgrace he now carried. I filed for divorce, and while the paperwork was grueling, each signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Financially, I was secure, thanks to my own career and the settlement that followed, but the true victory wasn't material. It was emotional. Friends who had suspected something but never spoken rallied around me. My parents, heartbroken for what I endured, became my constant support. The house felt emptier without him, but in that emptiness, I discovered something new: peace. Nights no longer carried the weight of secrets. Meals tasted like meals again. Laughter came more easily. Healing wasn't immediate, but it was real. Looking back, I can't help but reflect on the moral of it all. Betrayal is cruel, but silence in the face of it is even crueler. By exposing him, I didn't just seek revenge. I sought closure, a way to remind myself and others that no one deserves to be made small in their own life. I realized that strength doesn't always look like fighting back with fists. Sometimes it's standing tall with the truth in your hands. If I had stayed quiet, he would have continued living without consequence, while I carried the burden of his lies. Instead, I chose to make sure the burden wasn't mine to carry anymore. The lesson I took away was simple. Dignity matters more than appearances, and self-respect is worth every ounce of courage it takes to protect it. In the end, the matter was sorted, and honestly, I don't regret my revenge one bit. It wasn't about destroying someone's life. It was about standing up for myself in a way that felt fair and right. I believe closure comes in many forms, and for me, this was it. The damage he caused is something I'll never forget, but I can finally breathe without feeling that constant weight. What do you think? Was I justified? Or did I take it too far? I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments. And if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe. It really helps me keep sharing these moments with you.